You know what time it is.
Jaman.
Yeah, man.
Welcome to the Cali High Podcast. This is your host, Chenzo Nico, and I've been a cannabis connoisseur for 50 years. On the Cali High Podcast, we will talk all things cannabis as they relate to California and beyond, from the history of buds in the state to the laws that now govern its use, to notable personalities in cannabis and how they shape the industry in California and the world, to growing personally and professionally, indoor and outdoors, from flowers to concentrates, edibles to topical cannabis creams, and the people behind the scenes. Reports from dispensaries, cultivators, medical patients, historical documents, and of course, recreational users.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. Hi, I'm your host, Chenzo Nico. Welcome to Cali High's second episode. This week, our topic is growing and growers. And today, as always, with me is Joe, the sound guy.
Hello, I'm Joe, the sound guy. You have a book.
I got it, bro.
What is that book?
This book is The Great Books of Cannabis, Volume 1, Book 2, by Laurence Cherniak.
Volume 1, Book 2.
Volume 1, Book 2. And you know what?
What?
This is out of print.
Oh, really?
I found out about this in a canyon.
But you have it in
on
your
Maui.
hands, right? In Maui, you found it.
Yeah. A grower.
Yeah.
She shall remain unnamed.
Seashell?
She shall, by the seashore.
By the seashore? Yes. So, yeah.
Her father was a cannabis connoisseur, and she pulled out one night, deep in the canyon while the stars shone above, The Great Books of Cannabis, Volume 1, Book 2, and showed it to me, and we read from it. And now I'd like to have a little segment in our podcast where I read from it to you.
Oh, okay.
And our
When do you
listeners.
When do you want to do that?
Right now.
Okay, well.
Okay, so...
You found a page.
Yeah, I did find the page, and we have...
That book is not numbered, is it? There's no
No page numbers, so we're part 2, paragraph 132.
Excellent.
All right.
Please continue.
And since we have 2 growers on our podcast today, I thought I'd read a little bit about growing.
Yeah,
Now,
2 different kinds of
growers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One indoor, one outdoor.
Yeah. So do you remember your English classes?
No.
No. Do you remember a thing called a compare and contrast essay?
The essay sitting next to me, I remember him. Yeah. No.
Dude.
That's the only essay I remember back in school.
Yeah.
That dude.
No.
No.
So, okay, well, this is going to be painless because you're not going to have to write anything. All you have to do is listen.
Okay, then. I do
All right.
that. I do that.
But
well.
first, we're going to read a little historical document talking about growing.
I can't wait.
It comes from the chapter Sensimea, Production in the United States.
Nice.
All right. So here we go from paragraph 132 on. Some people merely throw a few seeds carelessly about, while others meticulously germinate seeds and carefully guard their growth in nurseries. Most nurseries, if not in a greenhouse arrangement, are at least enclosed by chicken wire.
Chicken wire.
We put chicken wire around our plants.
Every time you say chicken wire, the phone goes off.
That's weird.
That's weird.
Somebody's listening. Most serious growers own or scout abandoned and heavily wooded hillsides that receive lots of sunlight. Some growers feel that soil abundant with earthworms is just fine, while others add manure and fertilizer anyway. Devoted cultivators often spend many days of preparation in clearing away underbrush and removing occasional stumps or fallen trees. After the soil is prepared by turning and removing rocks and debris, more nutrients like limestone, bone meal, peat moss, and loam are added, and the soil is mixed again.
Wait, what's added?
Bone meal, limestone, peat moss, and loam.
What is loam?
Loam, I think it's like decomposed plant matter.
Okay, I'll leave it alone.
All right.
Sorry.
I got that.
Yeah.
All right. So, and then they talk about nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium or potash. And I'm not going to read to you those paragraphs because you've probably already figured out what those nutrients do for your plants if you're in the cannabis business.
Save it for the PowerPoint.
Yeah. And it's explained anyway. by our growers.
Okay.
Okay, so the next paragraph says, different types of plants deplete these substances from the soil or growth medium in differing percentages. Also, a plant will use these substances in producing differing proportions, at varying stages in its growth cycle. A fertilizer which is high in percentages of nitrogen will aid the growth of these plants, especially during the early and middle portions of their life cycles. Toward the end of the growth cycle, most plants require more phosphoric acid to stimulate flowering. Thus, it is when the plants are maturing and getting ready to bud that marijuana growers apply fertilizers with a high phosphoric acid content.
Say that 3 times fast.
I'll pass on that.
Okay.
Many grow sensimilla by removing all the males. Gee.
Party.
Only females will be left.
Groove.
Others grow the males apart and pollinate selectively to produce some seeds or to develop hybrids.
Just like a couple parties I've been to, yeah.
Several growers have master's degrees in agriculture, botany, or chemistry. Each year they grow, produce, and experiment with stronger and stronger strains of cannabis. Each grower has his own style unless he belongs to a group or a co-op. Each has the best method of growing sensimilla for that specific topographical environment, whether using seeds or the same genetic strain in their slips. And when he says in their slips, he means clones.
Those are slips.
Yeah, he explains it later on in the book, but I don't think we'll get that far today.
No.
The methods used by these full-time growers often produce plants up to 25 or 30 feet high.
Wow.
These heights are not reached only out in the open gardens, but in greenhouses as well. Some greenhouses, as mentioned, have movable tops that let direct sunlight in, which is hungrily swallowed up by bolting plants.
Boom, boom, boom.
Sensimilla grown under greenhouse conditions is in the most ideal and perfect circumstance in terms of a protected environment. Feedings are easier, and of course the protection from pests, other predators, and the elements is much more secure, especially when a strong lock is on the door.
And when you mean pests, you mean friends that come by and say, hey, dude, can I have one of these?
Or even don't ask.
Yeah.
But those days are over, hopefully.
Pests.
Yeah.
Pot pests.
Sensimilla plants grown this way are as carefully tended as our prize-winning orchids and roses.
Lovely.
Lovely. Thanks to modern cultivation methods used in the United States, the breeding of various strains of cannabis have resulted in very high-quality resin for making hashish. In fact, such fine quality that some connoisseurs are rating it right up there with the very best, which traditionally before came only from the East. The modern technology that necessitates growing sensimilla covertly for commercial production of hashish commences with merely a series of botanical tricks to develop one highly desirable plant, the offspring of which will always produce exactly the same quality resin. The offspring also provide themselves for future cuttings of the same genetic strain. And again, he's referring to clones. By developing hybrids until a desirable quality is perfected, a sensimilla or hashish producer can produce absolute quality control.
Wow.
What a concept.
I like clones. They're cool.
This system is used by tobacco growers to ensure that your favorite brand of cigarettes always give you the same flavor. Okay.
No.
Well, experiments have clearly shown that the contents of tetrahydrocannabinol in most plants depends on the strain rather than the location.
What did you call it?
Tetrahydrocannabinol.
Wow.
THC.
That's what that stands for.
Mm-hmm. And so there we have a few paragraphs.
Well, I find that very educational, that book. Can I borrow that book?
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Sure.
need to roll something on it.
Well,
I don't read.
This is an out-of-print book.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought that in.
Occasionally we will be reading from it. It's full of wisdom.
Let it be read.
So we're having 2 growers.
Yeah.
One, my friend Peter, he grows outdoors for medical purposes only and has been my growing guru for a few years. He's been growing for over a decade, and he grows out on the coastal plains of California. Mm-hmm. Almost gave his location away.
Yes. Address, please.
Yeah. And the other grower is the indoor grower for LA Cannabis. His name is Chris, and he grows indoors
We got some pictures.
with clones.
We got some pictures. You put that up on the
we have
website?
pictures.
Yeah.
We're going to put them up.
Yeah.
Some of them are already there.
Plants as far as the eye could see.
You were kind of happy.
I was very happy that day.
Yeah. Okay, first we're going to start with Peter, the outdoor grower. Okay. Today, Cali High is in a California farming community somewhere near the coast, and we're here with Peter, who has been my growing guru for a few years now, although we've known each other how long, Petey?
I don't know, 30 years.
At least. I think it's a little bit more than that.
Oh, well. Time flies.
So, let me ask you, Petey, how long you been growing?
Well, you know, when I was a kid, I'd dabble with it and throw a seed out in the yard and just didn't know what I was doing. And you get these straggly
Didn't you have a
plants.
20-footer in the backyard on Cantara
Yeah.
Street? What was that?
I never knew what I was doing. You know, they would grow giant, but the quality was never that good, really. And then I learned about nutrients. That was about 15 years ago when I first, started messing around. Well, actually longer. That was 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And
This is some do-si-do. Indoor, as opposed to outdoor.
yeah, I've always been an outdoor guy.
A little love for the sound man.
A little love for the sound man.
And then, I slowly got into using nutrients. Of course, the basic syndrome when you start using nutrients is you give your plants too much. You kill them with love, yeah?
You were talking about how the fog comes in.
Oh, yeah, and it gets foggy at night here, so I get a short season. When the buds get fat, they usually start molding out around middle September is when I harvest. Because these are not optimum conditions for growing here. Because of the humidity, we're near the coast here. So,
Let me ask you a question, Petey. Do you think that the environment and the pollens of the plants around the environment, besides the cannabis, contribute to the flavor of the cannabis?
Definitely. Where you're growing, the type of soil, and definitely.
Yeah. When I first started smoking, there would be some flavors such as some citrus overtone, and I thought to myself, oh wow, the weed must be grown next to a citrus farm, and the pollen just sticks on the buds, and that's where the flavor comes from.
I don't know how much it actually really impacts it, but
yeah,
that's what they say.
I think it's the natural terpenes of the weed now that more than the environment. But
of course, if you grow it in a swampy area, you're going to get swampy tasting weed. Or if you grow out in the desert, you're going to get this arid tasting, I assume. But if you're doing it indoor, it doesn't matter. Of course, we're talking outdoor.
So maybe we should go look at your old grow area and talk about some of your techniques.
Okay. Well, about 12 years ago, it started as a little 8x8 cubicle. Now it's 26 by 14, more or less. And then I grow a few stragglers around the outside of the main enclosure. As you can see, I haven't cleaned it up for the next season. I only do it June. I start on June 15th, more or less, germinating the seeds.
That is so late compared to me, Peter, and then your plants are always better than mine. Why is that?
I finish September 15th, and I get 20 plus pounds.
And I'm going to October and sometimes even the beginning of November all the way from April. I guess it's because I get less sun.
It's just knowledge.
What is the philosophy on the reflective mylar?
Just the more lumens, I think, the better the weed's going to be. It helps keep disease away too, reflecting up into the plant. Yeah, you want all kinds of reflective stuff. Out here, I had gophers, so I had to put cages inside of these just plywood boxes, which rot away in about 5 or 6 years. But yeah, they're above ground, and I backfill them with Sunshine No. 4 and Ocean Farm, about 2/3 Sunshine No. 4 and about 1/3 of Ocean Forest.
The potting mixes?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I noticed you have a lot of, this is vermiculite?
Yeah, that's puffed.
It almost looks...
It's volcanic rock that's been puffed.
Vermiculite than soil.
It's not vermiculite, it's perlite. it's puffed volcanic rock,
Interesting.
like popcorn, huh?
And so what advantage does that give the plant, having that in there?
Well, here, since some days are kind of foggy, you want your soil to dry out quickly because when you overwater a plant, it causes disease in the root zone. It's all about keeping your roots healthy. And that aerates it, and it allows me to dry the soil out quicker. And also you can manipulate your plants the more you can water. But here I water every 4th or 5th day, actually. And then you got this cheap enclosure here. This is just, I got a electrical conduit and bent it myself, and you just get a couple of hose clamps, and how simple is that?
Fairly
For
simple.
guys on a budget. As you can see what I grow in. I constantly mix new soil into this every year, and then I reuse some of the old stuff.
So no soil pests that continue from year to year?
Yeah.
They do?
No, I don't have
No.
a problem with pests. Healthy plants tend to take care of themselves if you keep them healthy. Don't overwater. Overwatering is really the big killer. It's hard to monitor how much to feed each plant, especially when you got about 25 plants. You're trying to figure out what each one wants, you know. And then I grow out here in just these pots.
And
They're
these
cloth
are 20
pots,
gallons?
which are much healthier because it lets the root zone breathe, and the roots will air prune themselves, they call it, because they hit the side of the pot and they just try to grow through it and they stop there. Whereas plastic pot, they will circle inside of the pot and become root bound.
Root bound.
So these are much healthier way to grow. But these you got to water every 2 days because they dry out quickly. Whereas these get to grow into the ground
The soil.
in soil. You get massive root zones growing. In here I grow about 3 plants per row. I got 6 rows.
And
But even that's too crowded because you start out these little plants, next thing you know, the whole thing is a complete hedge. And it's not good. They get crowded. Sometimes you get ones that really take off. They overcrowd each other, and that's when you get powdery mildew.
and so you lollipop the plants? You
Yes,
cut them from the bottom
stripping the inside of the plant out is definitely a major plus.
up for the airflow.
Yeah, and like I said, the leaf blower technique, I like that. In the mornings, come out with your leaf blower and blow the plant off. Plants go, whee.
Is it electric?
I love it. Yeah, it's electric.
Okay.
Whatever.
But that sounds like actually a good technique. I notice you have giant fans.
Yeah, and I also, well, at night sometimes, you know, if it's going to rain, I do cover it with plastic. And you definitely got to have a lot of fans blowing around in here. And I still got powdery mildew. I had dehumidifiers blowing up into it, but it wasn't completely enclosed because it's just I don't have the electricity to do it right.
What is your philosophy on pH levels?
It's really important. There's a big range in which it can grow, but there's optimum pH ranges to where it will take in the nutrients that you want it to take in at the time you're feeding the certain nutrients, you know, like your phosphorus towards blooming.
Takes a slightly different pH than like nitrogen?
Yeah, you ever seen a little chart?
I have
shows,
seen those charts with the
okay.
green lines for the different nutrients.
But I usually
along a graph
6.2,
of
6.3 all the way through. That's for outdoor. Indoor, they
6.3?
save
Yeah.
5 to 6.0 or something for indoor. Yeah, it's
Comes
different.
out 7.5 out of my faucet.
Right. Well, I use reverse osmosis water on all mine because we're on well water here, and you can't use the well water. It's just like 2,700 ppm.
Each.
So it kills plants, clogs up the soil.
And so what is it?
The cleaner
after-
the water, the cleaner the nutrients, the cleaner the herb. You got to know what kind of nutrients you're using because if you get nutrients that are full of heavy metals, they say heavy metals bad for you, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I spend
they
money
test
on
for it now.
advanced nutrients because they claim that there's some of the purest in the business, and I don't know.
For your
They
nutrients.
really work well, and people always say that my pot is stronger than most. So, and that's their claim too. More terpenes and cleaner weed, and I'm sure there's other good nutrients out there.
And where do you get your genetics from? You
I
buy
get-
seeds, right?
Yeah, every year I try and get different seeds from sometimes the seed bank in Europe, Little Sis, I think they call her. Or Dr. Green Thumb is really good. He's up in Canada. He's been around a long time. He claims his seeds don't produce hermaphrodites. There's many famous breeders I order seeds from, and I get hermaphrodites from them.
Right.
You know.
Well, what's the difference between a female and a hermaphrodite?
Well, they haven't
stress?
been stabilized. They haven't stabilized the strain yet.
Yeah. Oh.
Where some growers will send you seeds and it'll go hermaphrodite, and you go, well, what's up with that? That was $20 a seed, and it just goes hermaphrodite on me. And I guess, like Dr. Green Thumb says, they weren't stabilized.
And so stabilized, are these feminized seeds?
Yeah.
So they're stabilized, they'll come.
Feminized seeds, yeah.
But wouldn't any feminine plant become hermaphroditic if it was stressed to the point of
Certain strains
survival?
are more susceptible than others, I guess. I've had a lot of plants do that, yeah, from stress, go hermaphrodite. But then some strains I never have that problem with, so I don't know. I'm not a breeder. It's not as easy as just chucking some pollen out, right?
Right. So how do you know when to harvest buds?
When they start rotting.
Really? You're not out here like inspecting the color of the trichomes?
Oh yeah, constantly. Of course I want to take them, as late into the season as possible, but when it starts rotting, and after I do it for 3 months, middle of June till the middle of September, I'll get out of 20, 25 plants roughly, I'll get over 20 pounds in 3 months. Do the math. When you get it right, they just thrive. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, because I notice your plants always seem to be better and quicker growing, and
Well, I read my books. And
well, that's why I'm listening to you. So let me ask you another question. Do you ever use a little microscope on the buds?
of course, all the time.
Have you
Every
ever
day I'm out here just
You ever seen
first thing in the morning, before coffee, you're checking on them. You're first of all see if they're still there, and then you're looking for insect outbreaks.
What kind of
Sometimes.
insects do you get here?
We used to have ants, but there's no more ants on the property. It seems though the whole ecosystem's changing around here. We used to have frogs in the fields 10 years ago, and now there's no more frogs in the fields. And I don't know what the
Pesticides?
difference is. Yeah, there's less insects now because of maybe global warming. I don't know. It's interesting. But yeah, you get little outbreaks of
Do you get aphids?
aphids, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Caterpillars?
aphids and all kinds
Oh,
of
tell us about the
weird
moths,
bugs.
Petey.
And moths too.
Okay, so this is basically, if you didn't have to worry about moths, would you have the hoop house over the buds?
Yeah, I would, because in case it's going to rain, you got to be able to
Right,
throw
you
a
gotta be able
tarp
to
over it.
I-
Sometimes we get the early monsoonal rains in late August or September, which are rare, but it happens.
And usually evaporation doesn't happen too well out here because of the coastal climate.
Well, just the rain just destroys the plants. Basically, it washes some THC off and causes bud rot because that's when the buds are finishing, right?
Right.
And it's just
So, yeah, you
it's
gotta-
a really stressful, bad episode when it rains early in the season. You got to get out here with fans, and I'm up all night, and there's monsoon trying to blow the cover off, and it gets hectic. But
Yeah,
you can do it.
Let's
If you got
talk
the
about
will,
the
you can
moths
do
for
it.
a second.
moths.
What are they?
Every night I cover it with I cover this structure, which is 24 by 14 feet, with a netting.
The black netting over there.
Yeah, that black netting. It's a agricultural netting. It lets
And what percentage of shade is it? Or do you use it in the
cuts out
daytime?
like
sometimes?
10% sunlight.
10%. Yeah.
I don't use it in the daytime. No. When the plants are young, yeah, I will pull it over them. The seedlings, when it gets really hot sometimes.
I was told that where I live, where it gets hotter than it is here, or does here, gets to 104. It's even been 110 during one growing season recently, year before last.
Right. They
But,
say weed stops growing when it gets hot.
Right, so it shocks the
Too
plant
hot.
and it freaks it out. So my netting is 75% shade, and I only bought it to use on days like that.
Yeah, this is like
and to keep the moths
30%
out.
shade, I believe.
So once the buds are done, obviously you're going to harvest them, and then why don't you walk us through that process?
I just hang them up out in the barn over there and put a couple fans and dehumidifiers underneath them.
Let me back up a bit. Do you trim off the leaves before
Yeah,
you harvest?
Yeah.
Which leaves?
Well, first I'll try and trim them a little bit out here before I bring them indoors, but by the time you're harvesting, you're just like, get it done, get it inside.
What about bud leaves? Do you try to trim those too?
Well, while they're hanging upside down, I'll walk around and trim them in the upside down forest, as I call it. You know, just every day you go out there and a little bit closer, and then the final trim, I'll do that and collect it for making hash or whatever, but a lot of it goes to the ground.
What is your philosophy on cutting fan leaves?
It's a good thing. Some people say it stifles the growth of the buds, but then I see the pictures in the High Times of the pros, and they've got their plants all lollipopped up.
Right.
You know, I try to hold off until around the 4th week of flowering. That's when I really start stripping them. But you basically want to keep the inside of the plant cleaned out as you're growing it, just because it keeps the disease away.
Interesting. And so we back to the moth. So some moth comes in, and then what happens? What does the moth do? Because I know we have listeners probably that have never experienced the moth. You know,
They lay eggs. They have their way with your flowers.
what happens to the eggs, Petey?
And then the eggs hatch. They especially like the sweet, sticky plants because they know the eggs will stick to the
So they
sticky
choose certain
THC.
plants,
Yeah,
right?
they love certain plants more than others. They come in, they lay the egg, and it hatches, and the worm burrows into the center of the bud, and then they leave little worm shits everywhere, and it just turns into nasty, moldy,
Disgusting, disappointing.
tear your heart out.
Yes.
You've been nurturing
Cry.
it and thinking it's going to
Throw
be the
the bud
greatest
on the
thing all
ground.
year. Yeah.
Yeah.
To the
Oh, it
trash
had to
with it.
rip
You can
off
try
the-
trimming around it, but you end up with,
Yeah, I had a whole top of one of the plants that molded, and then I had like another that was beset with the moth caterpillars.
Yeah, it's a battle. I know yeah.
And I didn't use any pesticides. What is your philosophy
It's
on
a
that?
game I'm always playing with my plants because you'll have your main cola if you didn't really top the plants with the certain ones.
Obviously, you're totally organic in your whole operation, right?
No, I use
No?
synthetic nutrients from Advanced, whatever their base nutrients are. They're all medical or food grade.
Right. So then
It's synthetic. It's been synthesized. It's been changed. It's
Right.
like
And
once you put it into the
it would
blender,
have to be
it's
biological to
synthesized.
be organic, such as fish emulsion or some plant.
Yeah,
rock.
I use mostly organic. I use Advanced Nutrients full line, and then sometimes I'll use their synthetic based nutrients, and then I'll switch off and I'll use the organic based nutrients. So I try to put as much organic input into my soil as possible because it makes the buds taste better.
How many years have you been using Advanced Nutrients? Not that I want to give them a free
Well,
commercial.
no,
but,
I
you know.
know they should give me some free nutrients for this.
Yeah.
But tried them once, and then I switched to other brands, and I always remembered back that crop came out better than the other ones. Less problems, easier to adjust. Now they have the pH perfect nutrients, but I don't use those. I use their Jungle Juice 3-part nutrient.
So the pH perfect nutrients, what does that mean?
That means they claim that you don't have to use pH meters to adjust your solution that you're going to feed your plants.
Really?
Yeah.
It adjusts itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It maintains a correct pH. That's for indoor grow, though.
Right.
It's not designed for outdoor. I did use some of it, and I was adjusting it. Their Connoisseur base nutrient, which is their flagship nutrient, the most expensive one.
Called?
But it's all called Connoisseur.
Oh, that's the name
Yeah.
of it? Yeah.
And that's a pH perfect. And I was adjusting it up, and they don't recommend it. I called the factory, and I tried it last year, and It didn't come out that much better, if better, than the year before, and I didn't use it, so.
Have you ever grown with no nutrients, just the soil?
Yeah, when we were younger, we'd throw
Yeah,
the
yeah.
seeds out and just put water on it and drown them, and you get these scraggly plants that are, you thought was the greatest thing at the time, but it was swag, as we'd call it in these days.
So, most of the fan leaves are gone by the time you harvest.
Yep,
So you cut the branches. How do you do this?
I cut it branch by branch. First you go in and you take the main tops. And
Down to the first
try
branch
not to be
or so?
rough with them. And they say you're supposed to harvest in the morning because THC degrades once the sun gets on it. The plant also starts uptaking water, so you want to do it early in the morning before the sun gets on them.
What about flushing?
Flushing, definitely. Flush the soil out before you harvest.
How long?
I flush for a week to 2 weeks before I harvest. But sometimes if a storm's coming in, you don't have time to flush. And quite often when I flush,
And
it
you've had to harvest before
shocks the
they were-
plants, and it takes a while for the soil to dry out again. That's why you want the soil to dry out, and that's when the plant is really delicious.
Right, so you stop watering before you harvest. How long also?
Oh, just 4 or 5 days, you know,
Yeah.
till the soil dries out. You'll notice that the trichomes just come out of the plant when it starts drying out. But not
Interesting.
too much, because then you get woody tasting buds, so there's a fine line in there somewhere, and how moist to keep your soil. And
You use the moisture meter in your
yeah,
soil?
I use the moisture meter, but they always break after a month or so. And
So how, you know,
you
it,
just
it
stick your
goes from
finger in
dry
there.
to
When it starts
wet.
shrinking in the container,
Yeah.
you can see the soil starts to shrink.
Right. So, okay.
And sometimes the plants will wilt, and you don't want it to get to that point, really, but I've done that.
Have you ever
never
had to go
seen-
more than 4 days,
Yeah.
depending upon the weather?
Well, sometimes if I give an extensive watering to them, like it's going to be really hot, then I'll water the shit out of them. I'll let them takes, sometimes 5, 6 days I'll go without watering.
And so now you cut them down. Then what happens?
Hang them upside down for about a week to 2 weeks. And they say
Inside the barn here?
yeah. They say when the stem cracks, that's when you want to trim the bud. But I never wait till that point, because it seems by the time the stem's ready to crack, the buds are brittle, and you're trying to trim this thing, and it's just all the THC's falling off it. So it's best to trim not wet, but right before it gets dry.
And
Yeah.
you trim your own buds?
Yeah,
So how long does that take with 20 pounds?
about 2 weeks. It's really, it's the horrible part of the job,
I know.
especially
I know.
when you have substandard bud.
Yes.
Then it's really a drag.
Well, yeah.
When it's good
do
bud,
you-
you're like, yeah, I can get through this, no worries.
Do you have your favorite plants?
Yeah. My
Which
favorite
did you
strain
go,
was
from this year, what was your favorite plant?
Blueberry Headband from Emerald Triangle Seeds.
Here in
But
California.
yeah, but I grew that for years, and it was my favorite plant. And now they've changed the seed. They
Yeah,
redid it, and it's not the same
Is
strain.
there any consistency in seed company seeds from year to year?
Well, eventually they run out of their stock, and they rework the strain, and they call it the same strain, but it's completely different. It happens all the time.
Right, because you'll have to
You
have
grow
another
something
parent
for a few
to
years,
cross with,
and then
unless you've got the male pollen from that strain, or I don't know.
marijuana breeding weed is like people. You know, you always get the special child, right? But there's never going to be one exactly like that. So
Yeah,
they're
everyone
always
is individual.
different, right?
I've noticed that every plant
It's
is
all X and
completely
Y
individual.
chromosomes, right? Then I trim them kind of tight, not quite dispensary tight, and I still keep them on the stems right before they're starting to get crisp. Like in a week and a half, I clip them off and put them in bags, but I keep the bags open on a shelf. I only close them at night, and then, you know, after about a few days of doing that, you close them more, And make sure they don't mold, or because if you close a bag with wet marijuana in it, it'll get rotten in 1 hour if it's too wet. So you slowly burp the bags. And I used to try jars,
this is a curing process.
I used to use jars, but burping 200 jars is just, it gets old, right?
What size quarts?
Well, I don't use the jars anymore because they're also less forgiving because no moisture escapes when you close that. Plastic bags, I have better luck. The turkey bags.
Turkey bags.
You know, the big turkey bags. Just
Always
put
use
those in
turkey
it,
bags.
and every day I'll put a bunch of air in the bag and roll the buds around inside.
And so there's still some curing going on in there.
Yeah, it also knocks the outer leaves off as it's curing. I'm not worried about THC falling off of it. THC's inside of the bud. They say, oh, you're manhandling the bud. It doesn't matter. If it's good weed, no matter how you trim it or when you trim it, it's going to be good.
And so the whole drying process took 2 weeks, and then you cure it for
2
another
weeks,
week
yeah.
or two?
And then I have my ticket to go to Indonesia. And I close up all my bags after, drying them out. And I keep my fingers crossed and close them up and put them in the turkey bags. And then I have an underground storage, so I keep it in there because that stays cool, because that's THC will degrade.
Let's go have a seat.
THC degrades quicker the more often it is subjected to the elements like temperature change,
Light.
So if you can keep it at the same temperature, they say not in the refrigerator, because I don't know why.
What about the humidifier packs, the little packs of humidity?
I used those 1 year and I didn't need them. They actually made the weed stay a little too humid.
Yeah.
Because I pack my stuff up after curing it for 2 weeks and take off to Indonesia for 1 month. So no, I don't use them anymore. It stays pliable and nice for 1 year. After 1 year, the bud's you want some fresh THC. Buds aren't too big if you have the right humidity to grow them in. But yeah, here it gets humid, so
Yeah.
I still use the big bud maybe once or twice, like it says in the third and fourth week. It's expensive to do it right. It costs me $2,000 to $3,000 to set that garden up for a 3 month grow.
Yeah.
Soils and seeds alone, you're ordering $20 a seed is what it works out to, more or less.
Yeah. Now, we drove down the street here.
Right?
We're somewhere in California, and there was a good 40 acres, if not more, 80 acres? What would you say that was?
I don't know.
But there was CBD buds 4 feet high as far as you could see in every direction.
Yeah, and some of the fields in Ventura out here, they're just growing it like wildfire.
And
It's unbelievable.
are you worried about cross-pollination?
Yes, I am. And I did get a few seeds this year. I didn't know if I got it from a hermaphrodite, but yeah, I got some seeds, and some other people growing small amounts said they also got seeds.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if they're growing, the CBD fields are all female or what. I have no idea what they're growing.
Well, you remember when we went
probably
by, they were all
feminized.
buds.
Yeah,
So I didn't see
yeah,
any,
it must be feminized, but
Yeah, I didn't see any,
they're bound to get a
males.
hermaphrodite here and there, I guess, when you're growing acres like that.
Oh, yeah.
But we don't know.
No, we don't.
It'd be nice to know.
It'd be nice to know. It'd be nice to grow the seed and then have a little test made on the bud. See how much CBD is in there. Because, have you ever tested any of this?
I say you'd have to grow the seed from the supposed CBD pollen that got on it this year.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
right. And then you'd have to test
And then
that.
you'd have to test that.
Right.
That's what I meant.
But there
That's
could
what I
be
said.
CBD in the original strain too, so I don't know. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to press on. Next season, I'm going to grow a lot less because I got no reason to be knocking myself out. It's expensive, and I got no money. And this is not something you do for money. I'm better off painting houses like I used to.
So, Petey, on behalf of Cali High and as a friend, thanks for doing this for us.
All right, my pleasure, bro.
Okay, we just heard from Peter.
Yeah, that was
And now, wasn't that amazing?
that was cool.
And that reefer was pretty good, wasn't it?
That was fun. We jammed afterwards, too.
Yeah, we did.
We had a nice
We
jam.
might even insert like a few bars.
Oh, boy. Copyright.
Okay. So, and now we're going to hear from Chris Koljan,
Okay. Indoors.
indoor grower for LA Cannabis. Well, today Cali High is still at LA Cannabis, and we're here with Chris Koljan, the master grower for LA Cannabis. And we're going to ask you a few questions, Chris. I'm glad you participated in this interview today, and thank you very much.
No problem. Shoot.
So, how long have you been growing?
No, I was just thinking about this. I think I'm touching 15 years now.
15 years.
Yeah.
Always indoor?
Yep.
Always indoor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Started with a slightly not so legal 30 lighter probably, and just gone up since then.
And one thing that I had to change with my questions here was to add a question about the lights. Tell me about your light setup and what types of lights you like to use.
We're using the Solitex double-ended, basically their answer to the Gavita. And we, at this location, our location, we do have some Gavitas as well. But here we...
That's a type of light?
Yeah, so it's
brand.
a double-ended, so you're getting basically double the power of you would of a regular 1,000-watt bulb. So with a double-ended, you're getting a lot more coverage.
What does double-ended mean?
So it plugs into both ends, and you're receiving power from both instead of one
I see.
traditional screw-in bulb.
Right.
Yeah, that's pretty much the gold standard now. No one's really using the single-ended much anymore. Although I still do have some nostalgia for them. They do still get the job done.
And are these LEDs or are they...
No, so
what
these
they?
are all metal alloy gas bulbs. You want to use the HBS for bloom, and then
HBS being...
that's the metal alloy. That's
Oh, I see.
the flower bulb, yeah. Then you're going to use the blue light in veg, you know.
So different spectrums for different...
Yeah, you know, some people
Stages
actually
of the
will
plant.
have both in the flower room too, have some crop spectrum. But you might have maybe a better quality with that or more flavor, stuff like that. But production-wise, you would probably want to stick with just all HBS and flower.
And
The yield would be greater.
how far away from the lights are the plants?
You want about 2 feet at least. Especially with these, they're a lot stronger. You get up there, you're going to get some bleaching, some burn tips. So over here in this facility, we have real high ceilings, so we can get the plants nice and tall, let them spread out. You know, other rooms we'll have to keep them shorter, do some super cropping, keep it away from the bulb.
Topping the plants?
Well, you don't want to top them. You don't want to lose sights. So what you can do is a technique where you kind of pinch the stem both directions, start wiggling it, and then you bend it down, and then you'll actually get like vertical growth like this. And then that way it's not straight up pointing to the light. You have a little bit like this, and you get actually a lot more growth that way too.
Almost like bending your plant over?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Interesting. And what medium are we using?
We're using Rockwell here, all grow down cubes.
Can you...
It's like
Explain that.
fibers, ground up fibers mixed with volcanic rock. And
Cocoa?
No, we're not using any cocoa.
Is there a reason for not using cocoa?
Yield, I found. Yield is greater.
When you don't use it?
Yeah, and the system we're having here with drip and stuff, I feel like the cocoa doesn't hold as much water as the Rockwell does. So it's just what I've been doing for forever, so I'm stuck to it.
Do you maintain a certain temperature for the rooms?
Yeah, so we want it to be around 72, 73, you know, with below 50% humidity. But some of them, each room is unique, so you have to play with the thermostat here and there, depending on how many units we have in there. Or also, earlier on in the cycle, they're not going to be as warm, as much humidity as the plants grow. You have to adjust sometimes too when they
Right,
get later
plants
stages.
create their own humidity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They also prevent some cooling too. They can, if you have we turned all our lights on in the room with no plants, it would be a lot hotter than it is with the plants in the room because of the moisture in themselves.
Do you treat sativa, something that comes from more sativa spectrum differently than something from the indica spectrum?
Well, yeah, usually because they're going to grow slightly different as, as the form the plant will take. We're actually not working with a lot of sativas currently. Just the market down here dictates. We're mostly in the Kush business and other hybrids.
What are some of the sativas that are being grown indoors these days?
That's a good question. I'm sure there's plenty. Strains are getting kind of out of control too. It's hard to keep up with everything.
It's hard to keep up, right?
Yeah.
They keep mutating and people have different names.
And people are doing a lot of pheno hunting and finding things that work better with. They're finding, it's interesting. They're finding that certain strains are mold resistant, so they don't be affected by powdery mildew or pests as much as other strains. So people are trying to incorporate that into their favorite strain so they could get those benefits from certain strains like that. So it's just ever growing. The strains are kind of out of control.
So we've got 3 strains growing here?
Right now we're, yes, so we just started harvesting some of our gelato and wedding cake more than just our fire and do-si-do kush.
That's 4, I guess, yeah.
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 And then, we have some other strains in-house. We're kind of in beta testing, seeing how they do perform, because at the end of the day, we need as much as we can get. So some might be nicer quality, flavor's good, but if they're not yielding, it's tough for us to take the chance and do a whole room of something else. Like we have some sour diesel, we have some vampire mints, love potions, slurricane, but they're all kind of in the beta stage right now.
Well, I was never a big fan of sour diesel, but
Right.
Something about the smell.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question. You're using all clones?
Yes.
No seed starts?
No, not at the time. We're not. Some of the strains we're bringing in, we got from seeds.
Right, and
But
then you'll take a clone from the phenotype that's best? Or?
Yeah, and our space is limited. I'd love to get in there and really do some pheno hunting, but the space is limited. Yeah, so we have.
And
time.
have you ever developed your own strain?
No, I
No.
have not.
Okay, well, hopefully we'll give you an opportunity to do
Yeah.
that one day.
See if he gives me enough time off to mess around.
How about nutrients? What do you think about nutrients and what kind do you use?
We're we use Heavy 16. It's a professional grade nutrient.
I have one of their T-shirts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like them. They're local. They do small batches. It's consistent. But, people are moving away from the liquid fertilizers just because of cost and space. So we might transition into something powder in the future. But that's what we run with some other additives here or there.
So different nutrients for different stages of the growth cycle?
Yeah, and then there's some stuff you keep on hand in case there's the poor health or something, you want to boost it up. You can.
The nitrogen in case, or what about phosphorus? Is it heavy phosphorus towards the buds cycle?
Yeah, it's we use the fire, which is Heavy's phosphorus additive, which is kind of more evened out. I think it's 10, 12, 14. But then also sometimes we'll bump up with another phosphorus, the Monster Bloom, which is like, I think, 0.30-50 or 0.50-30. So it's got a lot of phosphorus, and that's a powder. So you use that early on to get the sites happy and blooming and happy, and then you kind of ride it out towards the end.
Interesting. And do you flush?
Yep, we flush with 2 different, there's a flushing agent in the Heavy uses called Finish. And then there's also the final finish, which is I believe an advanced nutrient. I use those in conjunction.
Yeah.
For about certain rooms, I'll do longer, but mostly about a week.
Have you ever used molasses?
No.
No.
Have you?
Yeah. Well.
With the Rockwell too, it's nice. It just takes all the salts out and.
Supposedly molasses will do the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, eats up the salt.
It's a more natural way to go, I guess.
Yeah, and allows the soil to go back into the natural state. Supposedly. I had my non-sulfured molasses out there in the last 2 weeks. But so, Obviously, there is no season for growing indoors, so how long do these things take from start to finish?
So our clones usually root in about 10 to 14 days. And then you want to we veg for around 3 weeks, 22, 23 days. And then the flower cycle is a full 9 weeks.
So the flower cycle is longer than the veg cycle?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Flower, yeah, our veg, especially here, we don't need them too tall before we put them in because they'll just take off once they go in the flower.
They keep growing.
Oh, yeah. You get about,
Another
the early stages, they're going to grow for probably the first 3 weeks. Then you're pretty much set with the height there. Then we do our super cropping, our thinning out, manicuring the plants throughout. Always tinkering here, making sure nothing gets too bushy.
So you adjust the height of the light to the height of the plant?
No, I mean, if we had to, we could. In certain rooms, we don't have that capability just because we're limited with the ceiling height.
Mm-hmm.
But I will start them lower and turn the bulbs up after, say, the second week all the way to 1,000 or 1,100.
Oh, so you can increase the power on the bulbs.
Yeah, these Solitechs are actually pretty sweet. They actually come with it's like a tablet, and they'll have drop sensors throughout the room. So they monitor, like, you get hot pockets, it can go up, down. Also, they have a sunrise setting, sunset setting, so you're not just shutting it off. The lights just go off and the room fills with humidity. It's kind of slowly dims for 30 minutes and then shuts off. So it's a more natural, kind of creating an outdoor effect with that.
Mm-hmm. So I suppose there's no need for using a reflective medium to get more lumens?
Well, yeah, see, that's, you're going to use Mylar or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's 100% reflectivity, but that's when it's brand new, clean, perfect. With all the humidity and all the stuff that goes on in the rooms, it dulls very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So you're looking at a paint where you can get basically 97 and it stays that way the whole time as long as you keep the walls clean. So I just found better results with just a good you don't
paint.
want a gloss paint, you actually want a flat white because the gloss absorbs the light and the flat white will bounce it back.
Seems counterintuitive.
But yeah, it's like the stuff they use in office buildings and stuff to get the most out of the light so you can see the most at less power.
Mm-hmm.
So I always found paint was the way to go.
Interesting. So tell me about your drying and curing secrets.
Well, it's tough here too because you want to get the product to the people, right? But I probably prefer doing it a little longer, but I think it's best to keep the rooms cold and just first day you want to suck as much moisture out as you can, and then you kind of want to slowly let it escape we do like 7 or 8 days.
And what is the percentage of humidity you like to dry at?
So like the first day I like to try to get it as dry as possible, just keep all the escaping moisture.
Somewhere under 20?
I mean, if you could get it there, that's probably gonna. You don't want to do that.
No.
So you want to be probably 40, and then put up to 50 the last couple of days. But it won't climb to that actually. After the first couple of days, will kind of taper off.
And so you've dried them. Then how is the curing process?
Well, after we have them trimmed up and stuff, we'll just keep them in turkey bags, and then it's off to packaging. So then it's in the jars, and
so
then
you
testing.
burp them in turkey bags?
Yeah.
So that.
And we have buckets too, but they're only in the buckets for a short period of time.
Mm-hmm. So for all of you that are listening, for the compare and contrast, the turkey bags are both for indoor and outdoor, it seems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, I think sometimes I'm like, I'm in the wrong business. I should be selling turkey bags for how many we go through.
Yeah. Do you get the little package, the little box with 2 bags?
Oh, no, yeah. Our stores, they have like growing specific turkey bags now. They come in 100 packs.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some of them are even starting to make UV turkey bags. So keeping the light away from it and keep it from deteriorating, keep it fresher, and have a better cure overall makes a big difference, I think. Keeping it in the dark, you don't want that light to get to it.
What are some of the first strains you remember smoking?
Probably Chronic, right? Way back then.
Mm-hmm.
That was what the best you get your hands on. Probably, definitely done some lower quality stuff, stepped on stuff from down south. But, you know, I've been pretty lucky. Growing up in the San Fernando Valley, we always had really good kush. Skunk back in the day. You don't see a lot of skunk anymore.
No.
Used to be had the blueberry muffin, I remember. Keep that in your car and just don't like those Costco muffins in there.
So if there was another strain you would incorporate and add to the 4 that we're growing, what would you?
Well, you know,
add?
we were doing Blue Dream for a while. I really liked the Blue Dream.
That's kind of a more sativa, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we'll probably bring that back at some point. Do a couple of rooms here and there. But yeah, the demand down here, they want the strong stuff.
Yeah.
So we'll give them
Everybody
what they
wants
want.
OG.
Yeah. But I love our Blue Dream. It's a really nice high.
Oh yeah.
And then we had the banana too, banana OG. Real
It's almost like
tasty.
Blue Dream.
Yeah, it's real tasty. I love it too, but it's very mild, you know.
Yeah.
And then we have some like other stuff we might be bringing in, but it's all, like I said, in the beta kind of.
Yeah.
You want to put 1 or 2 in a room, see how it performs, get the results back, see what potency is, you know, all that stuff. Because we just haven't had a lot of practice working with them.
Do you have pests at all in the rooms?
You're always fighting pests. It's just always going to be a problem, but we're pretty good at maintaining. You know, the worst thing you're going to do is get the mites, but there's going to be some fruit flies and stuff you always have to deal with, you know, but we have some stuff that takes care of that.
What kind of stuff?
Well, what we basically use is like a 3-in-1. It's just essential oils. It's like sunflower oil and peppermint oil. It's called Plant Therapy. That's my favorite thing. It's non-harsh, non-toxic, completely organic, and I think it does a great job.
You spray it on the plants? Yeah.
Foliar that with our nutrient, so we also foliar with.
Would you foliar feed?
Yeah. The Heavy 16 has a really, really great foliar. It's pretty...
How long into the grow do you foliar feed?
I stop after 2 weeks unless needed. Then it's pretty much spots after that in case something comes up.
So
spot spray.
before buds appear?
Yeah, you don't want to...
You don't want foliar feed on your buds.
You know, and then you can get away with, you know, if you want the lollipopping, you have some exposed stalk. You know, it's nice to spray that with some compost tea once a week. You see the plants really like that, get happy.
You make your own tea?
We buy a tea and then we can brew it. Law states now we can't make our own tea on site, so we have to do it that way.
Well, hopefully the regulations will change.
Yeah, that's the whole nother side of everything is, you know, sometimes I spend more day on the computer now than in the rooms with all the legality of everything we have to do here.
Let me ask you about your lollipopping process. And when do you, obviously you take off the fan leaves at some point?
Yeah.
Or all of them, most of them?
I like to lolly first and then give the plants a couple days and then do the trim back of the fan leaves.
So how many of the bottom branches do you cut off?
So see, that will depend too, because like certain rooms we let the plants get higher, taller.
Yeah.
So I like to pretty much, it kind of varies, but maybe it's about like a foot on average, more than a foot. It's also different, like the OG, we won't do as much. We'll keep a lot more on. It's not doesn't get quite as bushy as something like our wedding cake,
Right.
which will just take off. And that will do a little bit higher.
At what point do you start lollipopping?
It's kind of a wait and see game, but it's basically the end of the second week for average.
Of a 3-week veg?
Basically, I'll start when they're just approaching the height you want, is when you kind of want to do that. Because the shock of the lollipop will also stop them from growing up too tall as well.
Right.
So you kind of want to get them at the height you want, then start the lolling, and then start trimming back those fan leaves.
And so by the end of when you're ready to harvest, there's almost no fan leaves?
I don't like to completely...
Denude them of fan leaves?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ways to do it. Some people like to completely strip it, you know, and don't grow leaves, grow flower, but I feel like you're going to get better results when you leave some on, don't completely strip the plant of everything.
Right, well they are the light receptors, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So you just try to keep the short ones, you know. Anything with a stem too long sticking out is usually our kind of like rule of thumb. If you got 2 inches of stem, that leaf should go. If it's close to the plant, stem short, you know, leave it on there.
Now, I have noticed that outdoor grows, the number of fingers on leaves on an outdoor plant seem to be more than most indoor grows. What's the most leaves you've had, most fingers on an indoor leaf you've
I
ever
think we
had?
usually have 5 the max. I
Really?
think, yeah. Sometimes we'll have less. That's usually a sign that we have to switch our moms out. I think when you overclone, you start to see threes.
Genetics start to degrade?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's like making copies of copies. So it's always an important step to make sure you're overcloning. So we do a lot of topping here too that keeps that from happening. Topping our veg plants.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not cloning all off a couple.
How many generations of clones can you go without the plant deteriorating to the point where you need new clones?
I hope to never get to that point, you know. Luckily, it's you always just have extra. Always do extra of everything.
Yeah.
That way you can always hold on to.
So you always have a mother.
And sometimes you would be tempted. You have a really healthy plant. You want to put it in flower, but sometimes it's best to hold that back. Keep that as a mom instead.
Mm-hmm.
That way you have those healthy genetics spread throughout the rest of us. Yeah.
Now, we were talking with our outdoor grower about how the phenotypes don't seem to differ in indoor cloning. Do you see a difference between plants?
No, I think it's pretty. It's pretty solid. Unless you're having an unhealthy plant, I don't see.
No difference.
No, I mean.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's all environmental. You'll see differences. Certain rooms just perform certain ways.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as the actual like the end result, I don't see a very different. You know, if we're doing our job right, it's going to be what it is.
It's going to be consistent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, question about when you've decided your plants are dry enough. Do you want to describe how you decide?
For the harvest?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty locked in. You kind of just know. A good test is always, go up to the branch. If it bends, maybe you're gonna need a little bit longer. If it's starting to snap, it's probably ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
So then we want to get the girls in here to have the trim start. And then you monitor, once the product's done, you're monitoring it. Sometimes you're gonna keep it in the tray a little longer, flatten it out. Some of that moisture doesn't get stacked on top of each other. Then it might go into the bucket and then the bag.
Do you trim when they're completely dry or before they're completely dry?
You want just before it's where you want it,
Right.
because you're still going to continue to dry throughout the working trim site. So you don't want to have it too dry because then by the time it's going to be broken down and broken up, you want to keep a little bit of moisture to keep those nugs together. So by the time we get the packaging, they're in good shape.
How much does one trimmer do in an hour?
Not enough. It depends. That's not something I've paid close attention to.
Yeah.
But
well, I know it took me like 5 minutes per bud for my own
well,
plants.
yeah, especially when it's your own, you take the extra care. It's more of a streamlined process here.
Yeah.
So plus, with some of the stuff too, it's like you don't want to trim it back too far because we have to go through so many more processes with the packaging. That some of that little bit of leaf will protect it until it gets to the point, because it will still break off in the process of dumping it out, putting it into 5-gram jars and what have you. So if you kind of overdo it, you can kind of lose that protection of the smaller leaves.
It's like, how long can a freshly manicured buds be in a jar without them deteriorating?
Luckily I think stuff here gets on the shelf and it goes pretty quickly.
Right.
That's a good question. I'm not sure the exact time before.
I'm sure it would vary depending upon the
right. And then,
environment.
if people take it home and they might put it in a UV jar or something and it lasts a long time. I don't know if you ever tried like a UV.
Keep it safe from light?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had stuff that's been pretty old and almost got a hay smell. You throw it in there for a couple of days, open it back up, and it's all rejuvenated and smells great. So yeah, the light's the real enemy, I think, there. Keeping it on the shelves and all that stuff, I think it's not exposed too bad, so...
Interesting. So, right on. Well, again, thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you.
Really
It's my
appreciate
pleasure.
it.
Wow, that was cool.
That was amazing.
Learned a lot.
Learned a lot from both Peter and Chris, outdoor and indoor. Yep.
Yeah, I'm going to buy some dirt. Once
Yeah.
we're done here, I'm going to buy some dirt.
Go plant a seed, buddy. So, thanks for listening to Cali High's second episode. And for our third episode, coming up, we have Jared Kylo. president of the United Cannabis Business Association, and also the owner of the Higher Path Dispensary.
Very cool guy.
Very cool guy.
He's got a mohawk.
Very cool, like, unique neighborhood dispensary
Next time.
on Cali High.